They did not scream when the first human collapsed under standard station gravity. The aliens watching through the observation glass only tilted their heads, puzzled as if a fragile object had finally met the limit it was always meant to reach. The gravity field was calibrated for comfort, barely a whisper compared to most frontier worlds. Creatures from low-mass systems walked easily, gliding almost when the human fell, blood blooming dark against the pale alloy floor. The conclusion seemed obvious. Harmless species. Weak adaptation. Another short-lived curiosity from the outer dark. No one expected the human to rise. The station hung at the edge of mapped space, a trade hub for frontier species who survived on thin air, gentle suns, and forgiving terrain. Its corridors were wide, its light soft, its gravity tuned low enough to protect delicate bone structures and fragile organs. Humans had requested docking clearance 3 cycles earlier, classified as a minor carbon-based species from a mid-range system. Their homeworld was marked with a yellow tag: elevated gravity, active tectonics, dense atmosphere. Nothing exceptional. Plenty of species evolved on worlds like that and remained soft. The error was assuming the data told the whole story. The human envoy was not large by any standard measure. Average height, average mass, wrapped in layered fabric that looked unnecessary in a climate-controlled station. The alien clerks noted the way the human moved at first, shoulders slightly hunched, steps measured. They mistook caution for frailty. When the gravity shift occurred, a routine recalibration during dock alignment, the human's knees buckled instantly. Bones struck metal. A sharp sound echoed down the corridor. Red followed. Gasps rippled through the watching crowd. Blood was rare in public spaces. Most species sealed their circulatory systems deep within protective tissue. To see it spill so easily was unsettling. The human pressed a hand to their leg, fingers trembling, breath ragged. Sensors recorded elevated heart rate, oxygen strain, muscle microtears. The classification system updated in real time: low tolerance, poor adaptation, harmless. Then the human dragged themselves upright using the wall. Each movement should have been impossible. Muscles screamed under unfamiliar load. Gravity pulled like an invisible predator. Relentless, patient. The human's breath came harsh, teeth clenched, eyes wide, not with panic but focus. Pain was present, obvious, but it did not stop them. It slowed them. That distinction would later haunt the station's analysts. Across the glass, a Keth observer leaned closer, frills fluttering in confusion. Keth biology favored buoyancy and speed, not endurance. Their bodies failed quickly when pushed beyond design limits. They lived fast and died clean. Watching a creature bleed and still stand made something cold stir in their gut. The station medic team arrived, cautious, tools ready, expected collapse, shock, maybe death, dead. The human waved them back with a shaking hand. The gesture was small, almost polite. Their voice, when it came, was rough but steady. "I can walk." Translation software hesitated on the phrase. It flagged the confidence as anomalous. Every step the human took left a faint smear on the floor. Gravity pressed harder than any predator on their homeworld ever had. Bones compressed, ligaments strained, blood vessels threatened to rupture. Yet the human moved forward, not away, toward the central council chamber where first contact proceedings waited. To stop now would mean admitting weakness, and humans did not survive on a death world by surrendering the moment pain appeared. They survived by enduring it. The aliens began to whisper. Some turned away, unsettled by the raw display. Others watched with growing unease. Predators announced themselves with teeth and claws. This was different. This was a creature fighting an invisible force and winning through stubborn refusal to fall. Records from Earth would later describe gravity as constant, unremarkable. One standard unit to the human body. It was a lifelong pressure that shaped every cell. Bones grew dense. Muscles coiled thick. Hearts learned to pump uphill every moment of existence. Blood learned to obey commands issued by will as much as biology. Pain was not an emergency. It was information. The council chamber doors opened with a soft chime. Inside waited representatives of a dozen species, most floating, gliding, or supported by adaptive fields. When the human entered under full station gravity, A murmur spread like static. The human paused only once, to brace against the doorframe, leaving a red print behind. A counselor spoke, voice echoing calm and superior. "Human representative, you are injured. This environment is not suited to your physiology." The human looked up. Sweat ran freely now, eyes bloodshot, jaw tight. "This environment," they said, breath-catching, is light. The translation struggled again. Medical scans projected onto the chamber walls showed alarming data. Microfractures forming, internal bleeding risk, oxygen debt climbing. Any other species present would already be unconscious. Some would be dead. The counselor's frills darkened, a sign of unease. "You will damage yourself beyond recovery," the counselor warned. The human's lips twitched, almost a smile. "That depends how long you make me stand." Something shifted in the room. Fear did not arrive all at once. It crept in quietly, the way gravity always had. The realization settled that this creature was not enduring by accident. This was not desperation. This was normal. They came from a death world where predators hunted by endurance, not speed. Where storms crushed cities and the ground itself tried to kill you without warning. Where survival instincts were honed over generations of loss, adaptation, and stubborn refusal to go extinct. Humans did not thrive because the world was kind. They thrived because it was not. The council session proceeded, though many struggled to focus. The human answered questions succinctly, conserving breath. When asked about Earth's ecosystems, they spoke of gravity, pressure, competition, of blood as a price paid daily for survival. The words were simple, the implications were not. A minor tremor passed through the station as a cargo vessel docked improperly. Gravity spiked for a fraction of a cycle. Alarms chirped. Several delegates collapsed as their support fields flickered. The humans staggered, teeth grinding, a low sound tearing from their throat. Blood dripped from their nose now, dark and heavy. And still they did not fall. Security feeds would later replay the moment endlessly. Analysts slowed it frame by frame. The human adjusted their stance instinctively, widening their base, shifting weight, compensating like a seasoned predator, bracing against impact. No conscious thought, just survival instincts forged under constant threat. When the tremor ended, the chamber was silent except for labored human breathing. The counselor lowered their gaze, a gesture of respect rarely given. "Your species," they said slowly, "was classified as harmless." The human wiped blood from their face with the back of their hand. The motion left a red streak across their skin. Their eyes met the counselor's without flinching. "We get that a lot," they replied. Somewhere deep in the station's data core, classification algorithms began rewriting themselves. Harmless became resilient. Resilient became dangerous. Dangerous was not enough. There was no category for a species that bled openly, broke under pressure, and kept moving anyway. As medics finally convinced the human to accept assistance, the watching aliens understood a truth too late to be comforting. If this was how humans endured peace, what would they become when truly threatened? The answer pressed down on them, heavy and unavoidable, like gravity itself. The medics moved in slowly, the way you approach a cornered animal you do not fully understand. Two of them carried a light frame stretcher, more symbolic than useful, built for bodies that weighed half as much as a human and bruised at the touch. The human did not sit. They did not lie down. They stood with one hand braced on the council table, shoulders trembling under the constant pull. Eyes fixed on the far wall, as if looking too long at the watching delegates might give away something private. A Keth aide offered a cup with a nutrient solution. The human took it, fingers shaking, and drank without a word. The liquid was meant to restore electrolytes for soft-bodied travelers. For the human, it was mostly water and salt. Still, the simple act of swallowing made a few delegates flinch. Predators fed in public. Harmless species did not. Security teams had already sealed the corridor outside the chamber. It's not as a threat, they told themselves, but as a precaution. The station had never hosted a species with active bleeding before. The phrase sounded sterile in reports, but the memory was not. The smell of iron had spread through the filtered air, faint but real, and it carried a message every animal understood. Injury had happened, and yet the injured one was still upright. The human asked for a chair, not softly, not apologetically. The chair arrived and bent slightly when they sat. Several aliens stared at the warped frame like it was a warning. The human noticed and shifted their weight, careful now, as if trying to fit into a world that had not been built for them. The counselor began with formal questions again, but the tone had changed. The questions were not about trade routes or docking rights anymore. They were about limits, about origin, about what kind of world produces a being that can bleed and keep talking. "What is your gravity?" the counselor asked, voice controlled. The human's eyes narrowed. "One standard," they answered. A few delegates made small clicking noises, the sound of disbelief. One standard was not a Deathworld number. One standard was normal. One standard was survivable. The human took a slow breath. "Your standard," they added, and the room became still. The alien interpreter hesitated, then corrected itself. Projecting the clarification in clean text across the chamber wall, standard for the council was an average based on species that had already survived long enough to join. It was a comfort number. It had never been meant to describe the full range of worlds out in the dark. The human sat forward, elbows on the table, a posture that looked informal and aggressive at the same time. "On our world," they said, voice rough, "gravity does not turn off. It is not a setting. It is not a field you tweak for convenience. It is the floor. It is your bones, which is what you become." As they spoke, one of the medics adjusted a bandage on the human's leg. The human did not look down. Medic's hands were careful, almost reverent, like touching something sacred and dangerous. The alien misunderstanding had started long before this station. It lived inside data packets and neat classifications. When humanity first sent probes, the probes were metal and polite. They sent math. They sent pictures of their sun, their planet, their chemistry. They did not send the parts that mattered most. Did not send the smell of wet soil after a storm, or the sound of trees snapping in wind that could lift a roof. They did not send the way a dark ocean can swallow a ship without leaving a trace. They did not send the quiet truth that Earth was not hostile because of a single threat, but because it stacked threats until living things either adapted or vanished. The first alien scouts had looked at Earth and seen green. That was the first mistake. Green meant safety to most frontier species. Green meant stable climate, predictable seasons, gentle predators that hunted more out of habit than hunger. On many council worlds, life evolved slowly, like a careful conversation between organism and environment. Earth was not a conversation. Earth was a test. The human's wrist monitor beeped softly. A medic murmured something about blood pressure. The human nodded once as if it was a familiar inconvenience and kept talking. "You have predators," a delegate said. A thin-bodied avian from a low-gravity world. Its wings twitched nervously. "All worlds have predators." The human's expression tightened in a way that made several delegates recoil without understanding why. "We have predators," the human agreed. "And then we have weather that acts like one." They did not list facts like a lecturer. They spoke in short pieces, each one tied to something the room could feel. They described walking in heat that steals your breath and in cold that steals your fingers. They described water that looks calm until it is not. They described animals that hunt silently and plants that punish you for touching them. The human did not brag. They sounded tired, like someone describing a hard childhood they never asked for. A delegate from the Vesh Collective leaned in, its sensory tendrils lifting. "Your files show frequent internal conflict," it said. "War among your own kind." The word war hung heavy. Many species had brief violent periods early in their evolution, but most ended them quickly, either by cooperation or extinction. The Council had always assumed humans were still stuck in that phase, primitive, unstable, a danger only to themselves. The human's eyes flicked to the Vesh delegate, and for a moment the room felt smaller. "We learned early," the human said, "that the world does not care if you are good. It does not care if you are kind. It does not care if you mean well. It cares if you can keep going." The counselor tried to steer the conversation back to calm ground. "Your resilience is notable," they said, choosing careful words. "But resilience does not imply intent. We need to understand your purpose here." The human's fingers tapped once on the table, slow and controlled. "We came because we heard there was a council, a map rules. We came because we are tired of being alone." A few delegates exchanged glances. Alone was not a word most species used in diplomacy. It was too emotional, too raw. It did not belong in a negotiation hall. It belonged in private. The human looked around, eyes moving across bodies and shapes and fields that floated and glowed. You classified us as harmless, they said again, softer this time. You made that decision from a distance. The Keth observer outside the chamber watched the human's breathing. Even at rest, the human's chest rose and fell with effort. That alone should have signaled weakness. Instead, it signaled something else. Work. Constant work. A body built to labor against its own environment every second of life. A new alarm chimed quietly in the background. Not loud, not urgent, but enough to make the security officers shift. The station's gravity stabilizers had logged an anomaly during the docking tremor. The engineers were running diagnostics. The council tried to ignore it, but the timing felt wrong in a way that made instincts speak louder than protocol. The human noticed too. Their head tilted slightly, listening. That small movement, the way their eyes tracked the source of the sound, looked like a predator checking wind direction. The human had not meant to display it, surfaced on its own. A security captain, tall and armored in a sleek exhaustion, stepped forward. The station remains safe, it announced. The human did not relax. Safe is a temporary word, they murmured, barely audible, but the translator caught it and projected it anyway. Several delegates stiffened. The counselor's frills fluttered with irritation. Human representative, do you believe you are in danger here? The human stared at the counselor for a long moment. Then they spoke with careful honesty. I believe you do not know what danger looks like yet. Silence landed hard. Some delegates made soft distress sounds. Others tried to laugh it off, but it came out thin. In the corridor beyond the chamber, technicians hurried past sealed doors. A small group of station staff gathered near a terminal, whispering. The Keth observer, still pressed to the glass, caught fragments through the audio leak. Something about the cargo vessel. Something about its registry not matching its transponder. Something about a sealed compartment that should not exist. Inside the chamber, the human's medic finished tightening the bandage and stepped back. The human flexed their leg once, testing it. Pain flashed across their face, then vanished behind a practiced mask. They pushed themselves up from the bent chair, slowly, like lifting a weight. Gravity pulled at them. They pulled back. Sit, the medic urged. I need to see, the human replied. See what? The counselor demanded. The human did not answer right away. They walked to the edge of the chamber where the wall display showed station systems, a polite visual for visitors. Their steps were steady now, still heavy but controlled. It was as if the human body had already started adapting to the station's gravity, learning its rhythm in minutes. That idea made the delegates uneasy. The human pointed to the diagnostic feed, they said. The counselor followed the gesture, confused. The display showed a simple readout. Localized gravity fluctuations near Dock 12, where the unknown vessel sat. It pulsed in a pattern that looked almost intentional, rising and falling like a heartbeat. That is an engineering issue, the security captain said. The human's voice remained calm. On my world, they said, when something starts acting like a heartbeat, we assume it is alive until proven otherwise. The Keth observer outside felt their frills go cold. Alive. A ship was not alive. Gravity field did not pulse like that, unless a generator was failing or unless someone was testing it. The Vesh delegate spoke softly, and for once the tendrils did not twitch with arrogance. Gosh, are you suggesting sabotage? The human turned back toward the council, face pale under the lights, eyes still sharp. I am suggesting you do not understand your frontier, they said. You built this station to be comfortable. Comfort makes you careless. The counselor bristled. We are not careless. We are civilized. The human's mouth tightened, not into a smile this time, but something harder. Civilization is what you do after survival, they said. Survival comes first. Another soft tremor ran through the station, smaller than before, but enough to make a few delegates wobble. This time the human barely shifted. Their body absorbed it, adapting, bracing, refusing to give gravity the satisfaction of taking them again. In the corridor, the whispers became sharper. A technician shouted a code. Security moved. The council chamber doors sealed with a heavier sound than before. The counselor's voice rose. What is happening? The security captain hesitated, then spoke. Dock 12 reports a breach in containment. Unknown origin. We are investigating. The human did not look surprised. They looked grim, like someone hearing thunder and knowing what it means. Their hand flexed, fingers curling and uncurling as if remembering tools, straps, work. A small alien aide whispered to another, eyes wide. "Harmless," it said, almost pleading, as if repeating the classification could make it true. It said harmless. The human heard? Or maybe they simply understood the fear in the room. They took a slow breath, shoulders rising and falling under that relentless pull. When they spoke, their voice was quiet enough that the chamber had to lean in to catch it. "On a Deathworld," they said, "harmless is a story you tell yourself so you can sleep." The station lights dimmed for a fraction of a cycle, then returned. The gravity pulsed again, stronger this time, as if something near Dock 12 had finally found a rhythm. Across the chamber, the system display flashed a warning symbol the Council had never seen before, and the translator failed to label it. For the first time since the human arrived, the Council realized their greatest mistake was not underestimating human weakness. It was underestimating what humans notice when the world around them starts to feel wrong. The warning symbol pulsed again, slow and deliberate, as if the station itself had developed a heartbeat. Engineers spoke over one another through open channels, their voices clipped and strained. The council chamber felt suddenly small, packed with bodies that floated or stood or leaned against fields that hummed a little louder than before. Gravity did not change this time, but everyone felt it anyway, a pressure not measured in units. The humans stood near the display, one hand resting on the wall for balance. Their breathing was steadier now, controlled through practice rather than comfort. Pain had not gone away. It had simply been filed into a place where it could be managed. The medics watched with uneasy respect. They were trained to treat injury, not observe someone function through it. Dock 12's feet expanded across the chamber wall. The image shook slightly, distorted by interference. A cargo vessel sat locked to the station's outer ring, its hull dark and unmarked in places where registry codes should have been. Gravity readings around it rose and fell in uneven waves, stronger than anything the station was designed to handle locally. The security captain's voice cut through the noise. "We are sealing adjacent sectors. Evacuation of Dock 12 personnel is in progress." A council delegate hissed in fear. Evacuation meant risk. Movement meant instability. Most species avoided it unless there was no other choice. The human watched the feed closely. Their eyes tracked small details, the way shadows moved along the hull, the timing between gravity spikes. It was not curiosity, they're an assessment. "What kind of cargo ship is that?" the human asked. The security captain glanced at the counselor before answering. It filed as an independent hauler. Low priority, no declared hazardous materials. The human's jaw tightened. "On my world," they said, "no one hides something unless it matters." A tremor rippled through the station again, stronger than the last. Several delegates cried out as their support fields flickered. One collapsed entirely, a soft-bodied creature whose limbs could not function without assistance. Medics rushed to it, hands shaking. The human did not move to help. Not because they did not care, but because their attention was locked elsewhere. The gravity wave had a pattern now, it was tightening. "Your stabilizers are being tested," the human said quietly. The counselor bristled. "By whom?" The human looked back at them. "By someone who wants to know how much pressure you can take before you break." That phrasing sent a chill through the room. Pressure was a word everyone understood. It was the one force that touched all species, no matter how gentle their worlds had been. Security feeds from Dock 12 flickered into view. Armed teams moved cautiously through wide corridors, weapons held but not raised. Their armor was sleek, built for deterrence rather than combat. The human watched the way they walked, the spacing between them, the hesitation before corners. "You move like you expect the environment to protect you," the human said. The security captain stiffened. "Our protocols are proven." The human did not argue. They simply watched as one of the security officers stepped into a gravity fluctuation and stumbled hard. The officer's support field compensated too late. They struck the deck and did not rise immediately. A few delegates looked away. Others stared, recognizing the echo of the moment they had witnessed earlier. This time, the one on the floor did not get up on their own. The human exhaled slowly. "Your people are not built for sudden change," they said. Neither is this station. The counselor's voice shook, despite their effort to control it. What would you have us do? The question carried more weight than protocol allowed. It was not a command. It was a request. The human did not answer immediately. They moved closer to the display, ignoring the medic's protest as their injured leg protested with a sharp tremor. They leaned in, studying the ship's hull, where the image briefly sharpened. That compartment, the human said, pointing. It is shielded. Engineers scrambled to pull up additional scans. Data flowed across the screen. The compartment's mass readings did not match its volume. Something dense sat inside. Something heavy enough to distort local gravity when energized, a Vesh delegate whispered, tendrils curling inward. A weapon. The humans shook their head once. Not exactly. Another tremor hit, stronger, and this time the human grunted, muscles tightening as they absorbed it. The chair behind them slid slightly across the floor. Gravity did not feel theoretical anymore. It felt personal. The station's lights dimmed again. Emergency systems kicked in, bathing the chamber in a harsher glow. Alarms began to layer over one another, each one polite on its own, terrifying together. The security captain spoke rapidly into their comm. Dock 12 team status, Static answered. Then a strained voice. We have reached the cargo bay. The compartment is active. Gravity spikes are increasing. Our equipment is failing. What is inside? The captain demanded. Pause. Breathing. We do not know, the voice said. But it is responding to us. Several delegates cried out in panic. Responding meant awareness, or at least reaction. Either option was bad. The human closed their eyes for a brief moment. Not in fear, but in focus. When they opened them, something had settled into place. The look was familiar to predators and soldiers alike. It was the look of someone who had accepted that things were about to get worse. You have something here that was built for high-gravity environments, the human said. Something that expects resistance. The counselor's frills went rigid. Do not traffic in such technology. I believe you, the human replied. Which means someone else brought it to you. The implications spread quickly. The frontier was not empty. It was full of things the council did not control. Things that had learned to move quietly between comfortable worlds. Another security feed came online, this one from a maintenance tunnel near Dock 12. The image showed warped metal, panels bent inward as if pressed by an invisible fist. Gravity readings spiked dangerously high, then dropped. A maintenance worker stumbled into view, half-dragged by a security officer. Both looked shaken, their movements uncoordinated. The worker's voice came through in a sob. It pulled the floor, they said. The floor bent. The human's fingers curled against the wall. Artificial gravity manipulators, they said. Portable, powerful, unstable if you do not respect them. The counselor stared. How do you know this? The human's gaze did not waver. Because we built them, they said. Badly at first. The room fell silent. Even the alarm seemed distant for a moment. You built weapons like this? The counselor whispered. The humans shook their head again. We built tools, they corrected. For mining, for construction, for survival on worlds that would crush us otherwise. Then others learned how to turn them into weapons. Fear shifted in the room, changing shape. This was not the fear of an unknown alien anymore. It was the fear of realizing that humans had already walked paths the council had never dared to consider. The security captain swallowed. If the compartment ruptures, they said, the gravity surge could tear Dock 12 apart, and then cascade through the ring, the human finished. Yes. A delegate from a water world began to shake uncontrollably, their support field flickering as their stress spiked. The human noticed and without comment moved closer, placing themselves between the delegate and the display. It was a small gesture, instinctive, protective. Why would someone bring this here, the counselor asked. The human looked at the pulsing gravity readout. To see what happens, they said, to see how you respond. Or to use your station as leverage. Against whom, the counselor demanded. The human met their gaze. Against anyone who thinks comfort equals safety. Another alarm cut through the chamber. Sharper this time, engineers shouted. Gravity readings spiked beyond safe thresholds in Dock 12. The security feed showed officers struggling just to stay upright. One slammed into a bulkhead and did not get up. The human took a step forward, then another, toward the chamber doors. The medic grabbed their arm. You cannot go, they said. You are injured. The human looked down at the medic's hand, then back up. I am adapted, they replied. The counselor's voice rose. You are not authorized. The human did not stop. Your people are not built for this, they said. Mine are. Security officers blocked the door, weapons raised uncertainly. None of them wanted to be the first to fire. Something about the human's posture made that unthinkable. They stood under full station gravity, injured, bleeding again slightly from reopened wounds, and yet they radiated a quiet certainty. You classified us as harmless, the human said, voice carrying. That was your mistake. But it does not have to be your end. The counselor hesitated, torn between protocol and survival. Another tremor shook the chamber, throwing several delegates off balance. The human barely swayed. Let them pass, the counselor said at last. The doors opened with a heavy sound. Beyond them, the corridor lights flickered, shadows stretching unnaturally as gravity fields struggled to compensate. The human took a breath and stepped forward. As they walked, the station seemed to push back harder, gravity pressing down with increasing force. Every step was labor. Every movement cost something. The human paid without complaint. Security teams fell in behind them, keeping distance, watching in awe and fear as the human moved through conditions that left trained officers gasping. One whispered into their voice shaking. They are still walking. In the chamber, the council watched the feed switch to follow the human's progress. Data overlays showed gravity levels climbing steadily in the corridors ahead. Red warnings flashed constantly. The delegate whispered, "They will die." The counselor did not answer. They watched as the human reached the first gravity surge zone and slowed, planting their feet, adjusting stance like someone lifting an invisible weight. Muscles strained, bones compressed. The human's breath came hard, but they did not retreat. For the first time, the council saw what it truly meant to come from a death world. Not strength without limit, but endurance without surrender. Not fearlessness, but the willingness to move forward anyway. The feed shook violently as another surge hit. Human dropped to one knee, one hand slamming into the floor. Blood splattered the metal again, dark and real. Gasps echoed in the chamber. Then the human pushed back up. Dock 12 loomed ahead on the display, its structure warping under invisible stress. The pulsing gravity source at its heart grew brighter, stronger, as if reacting to the approaching presence. The human looked straight at it, and for the first time since the alarms began, the gravity pulses changed, tightening, focusing, as if whatever waited inside the sealed compartment had noticed the human coming. The gravity surged again as the human crossed into Dock 12, and this time it did not come as a wave. It came as a grip. The floor screamed as metal strained under forces it had never been meant to bear. Lights shattered. Warning panels burst, showering sparks that skidded across the deck like frightened insects. Several security officers were thrown hard against the walls, their armor cracking, their support fields collapsing into useless flickers. The human staggered, knees bending deeply, spine bowing under the weight. For a breathless moment, it looked like gravity had finally won. Blood streamed freely now from reopened wounds, pooling beneath their boots. Every sensor screamed that the human body was failing. Then the human planted both hands against the deck and pushed. It was not a dramatic motion. It was not fast. It was the same movement repeated 1,000 times on Earth by people who lifted rubble, who climbed out of wreckage, who stood back up because staying down was not an option. Muscles locked, bones held. Breath tore in and out like broken machinery. But the human rose again, inch by inch, until they were standing inside a gravity field that would have crushed almost any other life form present. The security feeds trembled as the sealed compartment ahead began to open on its own. The object inside was not alive, not in any way the council understood. It was a dense, angular mass wrapped in containment plating, humming with stored force. Human engineers had once built something like it for drilling through planetary crusts, for anchoring cities to unstable ground. Someone else had stripped away the safeguards and turned it into a gravity weapon, crude and dangerous. The pulsing fields surged toward the human as if testing them. The human took another step forward, then another, each one an act of defiance against physics itself. Their injured leg buckled briefly, then stabilized as other muscles compensated. On Earth, bodies learned to share the load. Pain did not isolate you. Behind them, a security officer tried to crawl forward and failed, crushed flat against the deck. The human glanced back once, then shifted position slightly, placing themselves between the officer and the strongest pull. Gravity bent around the human's mass, disrupted just enough to give the officer room to breathe. The human reached the control interface embedded in the compartment wall. The screen flickered, refusing to recognize non-authorized access. Gravity spiked harder, slamming the human forward until their forehead struck the metal with a dull crack. Blood smeared across the panel, the interface unlocked. Human blood carried more than oxygen. It carried identity. The system recognized it. In the council chamber, several delegates recoiled in horror and awe as the realization hit them at once. This device had been built with the assumption that a human would be the one standing here, that only a human could. The human laughed once, a short, broken sound pulled from somewhere deep and bitter. Figures, they muttered. They braced one arm against the wall and began overriding the controls manually. Fingers moving slower now, but still precise. Each gravity surge tried to crush their hands into the console. Each time, the human adjusted grip and kept working. Security feeds showed Dock 12 tearing itself apart around them. Bulkheads warped inward. Cargo containers ruptured and slammed together like toys. Alarms failed one by one, systems shutting down under stress. "Human," the counselor's voice crackled over the open channel. "You must disengage and retreat." The human did not look back. "If I retreat," they said, breath ragged, "this station dies." The gravity weapon pulsed again, stronger than before, as if enraged by resistance. The human screamed, not in fear, but in effort, muscles tearing microscopically as they held position. Internal bleeding increased. And still, they did not stop. With a final sequence entered, the humans slammed their palm down on the emergency release. The gravity field screamed, collapsing inward on itself in a violent implosion of force that shook the entire station. Dock 12 went dark. For a heartbeat, everything was silent. Then gravity normalized. The human collapsed forward as the field vanished, hitting the deck hard, unmoving. Security officers rushed in despite their fear, dragging themselves through the wreckage to reach them. Medics followed, hands trembling as they scanned the human body. The human was alive, barely. In the council chamber, no one spoke. Data streams stabilized. Engineers reported cascading failures had stopped. Dock 12 was destroyed, but the station ring held. The weapon was inert, its core crushed by its own collapsed field. The counselor lowered their head, a gesture of profound respect that spread slowly through the chamber as others followed. Hours later, the human lay in a medical bay reinforced far beyond standard design. Gravity inside was still heavy, set deliberately closer to Earth norm, after doctors realized reducing it too much caused more harm than good. The human's body adapted to pressure, rejected comfort. The human woke slowly, eyes opening to soft light and unfamiliar shapes. Pain was everywhere, deep and loud, but it was familiar. Survival had taught them how to listen without obeying. A medic noticed the movement and alerted the counselor, who entered quietly with 2 aides. They kept their distance, suddenly aware of how fragile they were by comparison. "You saved this station," the counselor said. The human swallowed. "I did my job." "We misjudged your species," the counselor continued. "We thought your world was harsh, but manageable. We believed civilization required gentleness." The human turned their head slightly, meeting the counselor's gaze. "Civilization requires survivors," they said. "Gentleness comes later." The counselor hesitated. "Why did you come here?" "Truly." The human closed their eyes for a moment. When they opened them again, their voice was quiet. "Because Earth taught us something," they said. "If you face the universe alone, it will eventually break you. We wanted to see if anyone else was willing to stand under the weight with us." Outside the medical bay, word spread quickly. Security officers spoke in hushed tones about watching a human walk into crushing gravity and refuse to die. Engineers replayed footage of the human shielding others instinctively. Analysts rewrote classification protocols from the ground up. Harmless was erased. Frontier species began requesting human advisors. Mining guilds asked for human engineers. Security councils quietly updated their threat assessments, not out of hostility, but respect. Humanity did not threaten the galaxy with fleets or weapons that day. They did something far more unsettling. They endured. Weeks later, as the human ship prepared to depart, the counselor watched from the viewport. The human walked unassisted now, scars fresh, but posture steady. Gravity on the dock had been raised slightly, just enough to test, just enough to remind. The counselor felt it press down and struggled to keep balance. The human noticed and paused, offering a steadying hand without comment. The counselor took it, surprised by the warmth, the solidity. "What will you do now?" the counselor asked. The human looked out at the stars, eyes thoughtful. "Keep going," they said. "That is what we do." As the ship pulled away and jumped into the dark, the counselor understood the truth that would spread across the galaxy in time. Humans were not terrifying because they sought conquest. They were terrifying because they had been forged by a world that never stopped trying to kill them, and they had learned how to live anyway. On a death world, survival was not a phase. It was a language written into bone and blood. And now the galaxy had heard it spoken.